I said it so many times. People care more about the characters than the plot. Think about your favorite book. Why do you love it so much? Sure, there's probably some great twists, but usually it's the characters that you get attached to. So if they're that important, then we as writers need to work extra hard to actually create characters that readers will root for. Okay, so without sympathetic characters, your readers will lose interest and usually ditch the book. How often have you done that? You start a book that looks cool, there seems to be some cool plot twists in the back cover blurb, and then you read it and you just don't like the character. They're just bland, boring, a goody two-shoes, or they just have no motivation, and you just never can get behind them. So that is what we are going to avoid with our characters, okay? But what makes the character sympathetic? What makes a character that readers will root for? A big piece is believable flaws. None of us like goody two-shoes in writing, okay? Nobody likes perfect characters. I like characters that feel believable, that feel real, that have flaws, so that when they make the wrong choice, because they will, they're human. I mean, they're made up humans, but they're supposed to emulate humans. So as humans, they will make the wrong choice. And that should feel relatable to us because as humans, we don't make the right choice. And so we want our characters to have that back and forth, to have flaws that make them feel real and make them feel relatable. And then when they fail and then make the right choice, readers will feel that much more compelled to follow along and root for them in their journeys. Sympathetic traits are also super important. If your character is all flaws, your reader won't care because they'll just be doing the wrong thing all the time. So if you add in sympathetic traits, something that makes them feel real, where their heart goes out to a certain people group, a certain, I don't know, it usually ties into backstory. So if they had a old grandmother who loved them and was the only person in their life that they felt worthy around, then maybe they have a special spot in their hearts for young kids that feel neglected or older people who remind them of their grandmother. Something that makes them feel sympathetic and just draws on those traits so that yes, you have the flaws, but you also have a side of them that is sympathetic and where the reader can root for them in doing the right thing. They also need to have fears. Every human has fears. Your characters need to have something that they fear. And maybe you don't know it right off the start, but maybe as you start writing, you find out, oh, my character has this fear. And it doesn't have to be silly like they're scared of spiders. Yeah, maybe that might create a comical scene at some point in time. But that isn't, I don't know, that doesn't really get the reader rooting for them. But if they have a real fear that pushes them to a point of no return, and then everything collides and they have to face that fear, it creates a really powerful moment where they have to choose the good and choose what's hard over falling back into their fears and letting self take control. They also need something that they're fighting for. So when you get your characters outside of themselves and make it so that it's less of, oh, I want this amazing job because I've always dreamed of having this job and it's my dream job, whatever, to I need this job because I love it, but also because I have this person depending on me, and if I don't get this job, then blank will happen to the person that I love. See how much more relatable, how much more the reader will fall in love with those characters and just cheer them on as they push for those dreams. So you want characters that have goals outside of themselves. And to do that, you need someone that they're fighting for, someone or something. And it's usually outside of themselves and their own personal goals. And usually with those sort of things, you'll tie in a backstory. So I already mentioned backstory a little bit, but backstory is really another thing that creates a sympathetic character. And that is really important to actually think of before you start writing. I mean, you can write out a whole 10-page document about your character's backstory and never include it, but your character will be so much more layered because you as a writer know what's going on inside of their head and you know how they're thinking and how they'll react based on their backstory and based on the people that hurt them and the people that treasured them, the people that, I don't know, all those different things that tie into what makes a person a person. So it's so important to take the time and look into your character's backstory. Get to know them before you start writing them. It'll just make them so much more layered and so much more believable, and your readers will be able to fall in love with them that much more easily. Another really, really important thing to think about is their arcs. So every character has an arc, whether you know it or not. It might be a negative arc where they see the truth and they're confronted with it, and then they push back on it and they choose to believe the lie. Or it might be a positive arc where the opposite happens and they are confronted with the truth and they embrace it. There are so many different complicated arcs out there, and it's so important that you learn what arcs are and learn how to embrace them in your story. Because when you think about it, no one stays stagnant, okay? So you need to bring your character from point A to point B, and in a way where they learn and grow. Now, sometimes it is okay to do a negative arc where they don't see the truth. I know in one of my novels, it's not the one that I'm editing, but it did happen like that. They had a negative arc and the character went so far before seeing the truth, and then they lost everything, and that pushed them to the truth, like right at the end. And that's okay. You can bring your whole reader on a journey with these characters, and that's your goal. So make sure that as you're crafting these characters, that you develop an arc for them. And maybe it'll come over the time of the story. If you're a plotter, it really helps to actually get that in writing and figure out what their lies and their truths and their backstories are. But maybe if you're a pantser, it's more of a thing that happens when you're editing. Once you go back and you see what needs to be fixed, and then see how you can draw on their arc more. The biggest thing to remember is that you want characters that are layered. You want characters that your reader can get behind, and so often that comes through change, through your character seeing the truth and combating the lie. It also comes from developing your character really well before you ever put the pen to the page. So I just encourage you, as you're beginning your drafting process, to think about these characters, actually put the time in to develop sympathetic characters before you ever even start writing. As writers, we need to develop the characters that readers will love. So if you've enjoyed watching this video, make sure to write a comment. Tell me what character you love reading about, why you love reading about them, and if I missed anything that you would love to add, please drop it in a comment and I'd love to chat about it. So if you enjoyed watching this video and want to follow along more for more writing tips and my writing journey, please consider hitting the subscribe button and following along. I will see you next week.